Okay, so ready to dive into some of those like super frustrating habits. You know the ones that we all have that make us feel like we're stuck on autopilot?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's like that procrastination urge or like snacking, even when you're not hungry. But thankfully, Inner Balance Red Print has some really solid advice on breaking free from those.
It's funny you mentioned autopilot because habits really are our brain being efficient. Like it wants to streamline things, but the downside is we can get locked into behaviors that aren't helping us.
Totally. Like my morning habit, it's like my brain is wired to grab my phone, like even before I open my eyes. It's crazy. So how do we even start rewiring those automatic responses? I'm guessing that whole cue routine reward loop everyone talks about is a good place to start.
Yeah, for
What's
sure.
Inner Balance Red Print's take on it?
Well, it's definitely like the core concept. But what I found really interesting is that inner balance red print actually goes deeper into like the types of rewards that we're going after. And it's not just about pleasure, it's about meeting those underlying needs. For example, procrastination. It's not always just about avoiding a task. It can be about looking for control when you're feeling totally overwhelmed.
Okay, so it's like identifying that need behind the habit. That's key.
Exactly.
That makes total sense. So if I'm procrastinating on that huge project, maybe it's not just laziness. Maybe it's a need to like feel less overwhelmed by everything. So instead of beating myself up about it, I should try to find healthier ways to get that sense of control back. This is like already an aha moment for me.
I know, right? And that's where understanding those cues and rewards is super important. If you can figure out what's triggering that procrastination and what need it's filling, even if it's just temporary, you can start to interrupt that cycle and, replace it with something healthier.
Okay, so let's talk about actually pinpointing those habits that we want to change.
Hmm.
I mean, some of them are so ingrained we don't even realize we're doing them. Does Inner Balance Red Print have any techniques for like bringing those sneaky habits to light?
Absolutely. The book really emphasizes self-reflection, but it's not just journaling, it suggests getting specific, like track not just what you do, but your thoughts and feelings leading up to it. You can even use a habit tracker. Some are specifically designed to help you see those patterns and triggers.
I'm a very visual person, so I love the habit tracker idea. Sometimes it feels like our habits have a life of their own.
Yeah, totally.
So is there a way to get some outside intel to help with the detective work?
Definitely. Inner Balance Red Print suggests feedback from people you trust. But here's the thing. You really got to be selective about who you ask. It emphasizes that. You want constructive support, not judgment. So choose people who are good listeners and genuinely have your best interests at heart.
Yeah, for sure. I could totally see how the wrong feedback would backfire and just make you feel worse. It's all about finding those cheerleaders who will gently nudge you.
Yeah.
And of course, it's not just about what other people see. It's about tuning into our own signals too.
Right, exactly. The book talks about paying attention to your emotions, like after you indulge in a habit. If you get hit with guilt,
Yeah.
anxiety, or even regret, that's a pretty clear sign the habit might not be serving you.
It's like our emotions are trying to tell us something's off. You mentioned values. Is there anything in Inner Balance Red Print about using our values to like guide our habit change?
There is. It encourages readers to think about their core values
Okay.
and then see if their current habits are actually supporting those values
Yeah.
or sabotaging them.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, even when we know a habit is bad, it can be super hard to break. Knowing why those changes matter can be a game changer.
Yeah, totally.
So let's say we've identified a habit we want to change. What's Inner Balance Red Print's take on making it actually happen?
Well, one of the biggest things is replacing a bad habit with a good one. Instead of trying to just like completely eliminate it, Inner Balance Red Print calls this the habit swap. It's kind of like redirecting that neural pathway instead of trying to destroy it.
Okay, that sounds way more manageable than going cold turkey.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to eliminate my morning social media scroll, I could swap it with reading something inspiring for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
It's still fulfilling that need to connect and wake up, but in a way, healthier way.
That's a perfect example.
Right.
And what's really cool is that Inner Balance Red Print has all these other strategies to make those swaps actually stick.
Okay, I'm officially intrigued. Tell me more. What else is in this habit change toolbox?
Well, the book talks a lot about the power of our environment. It's about designing your surroundings to set yourself up for success, like making the positive choices the easy choices.
So if I'm trying to cut back on sugar, I should probably stop buying those giant bags of candy,
Right.
like out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly. And the opposite is true too. If you want to make exercise a habit, lay out your workout clothes the night before. Or keep your yoga mat somewhere you can see it.
You know what? I actually do that. I put my running shoes right next to my bed, so there are zero excuses in the morning. It totally works. But let's be honest. Sometimes motivation just dips, even with the best intentions. What happens when willpower alone isn't enough?
Inner Balance Red Print has a really cool approach to that. It suggests shifting your focus from willpower.
To skill power.
Skill power.
Yeah.
Really. Instead of just relying on motivation, you build systems and strategies that make sticking to your habits easier, almost like a game.
Skill power. It's like we're leveling up our habit-changing abilities. Tell me
Yeah.
more about those systems and strategies. What kind of game are we talking about here?
Well, the book talks about something called temptation bundling. Basically, you pair something you want to do with something you need to do. So let's say you love listening to podcasts, but you struggle to find time for exercise. You could bundle those two activities by only letting yourself listen to your favorite podcast while you're working out.
Ooh, that's clever. I am totally stealing that. I've been meaning to get back into running, but it feels like a chore. But if I can only listen to my favorite true crime podcast on the treadmill, suddenly running sounds way more appealing.
Exactly. It's all about finding those creative ways to make healthy habits more fun. The book also talks about celebrating small wins, like giving yourself a little pat on the back each time you make progress.
You know, I think we get so caught up in the end goal that we forget to acknowledge those little victories along the way. Like we're so focused on running the marathon
Yeah.
that we forget to celebrate finishing each mile.
Right. And those small wins are super important. They reinforce those new neural pathways and build momentum, which helps you keep going when things get tough.
Okay, this is all great, but I know from experience that slip-ups are bound to happen. How does Inner Balance Red Print suggest we deal with those moments? You know, when we fall off track.
It actually has a whole section on that. It emphasizes self-compassion, which is so important. It's recognizing that slip-ups are totally normal. They're part of the process, not a sign of failure.
So let's say I have a slip-up. I cave and eat an entire pint of ice cream. Instead of beating myself up, I should try to understand what triggered it and how I can prevent it next time.
Exactly. It's about approaching those slip-ups with curiosity, not judgment. Ask yourself what was going on before you slipped up. Were you stressed, tired, maybe overwhelmed? Once you know the trigger, you can start to build strategies for dealing with similar situations.
So like those slip-ups are valuable data points. They're giving us insights and helping us refine our approach.
Exactly. And sometimes those slip-ups can even reveal deeper needs that aren't being met. Maybe that ice cream wasn't just about the sugar. Maybe it was a way to deal with emotional discomfort. Inner Balance Red Print encourages us to look for those underlying needs and find healthier ways to address them.
That is so insightful. It's like peeling back the layers of the onion and getting to the root of those patterns. You know, we've been focusing on the individual parts of habit change, but I'm curious to hear more about those social and societal factors you mentioned earlier. How do those external forces fit into all of this?
It's fascinating, right? We're constantly bombarded with messages and things that trigger our reward systems and encourage certain behaviors, whether it's buying the newest gadget or scrolling on social media for hours.
It's like we're swimming in a sea of cues and rewards that are actually working against us.
Exactly. And Inner Balance Red Print highlights how important it is to be aware of those influences. It encourages readers to be more mindful about the information they consume and make conscious choices about the environments they're in.
So it's not just about what we do as individuals. It's about recognizing the systems around us that are shaping our choices and finding ways to navigate them in a way that aligns with our values.
Precisely. It's about taking back our power and creating a world that supports our well-being, both individually and collectively.
This is all so thought-provoking. We've talked about the science of habits, the power of replacement, the importance of self-compassion, and even the influence of society. Is there anything else in Inner Balance Red Print that you found particularly helpful or insightful?
Well, one of the things it talks about is mindfulness. Like, it has a whole chapter on mindfulness techniques for breaking bad habits.
Oh, wow. Okay, so how does mindfulness actually help with that? Like, how does it help us break free from those patterns?
Well, mindfulness is all about being present, like really noticing your thoughts and feelings and body without judging yourself. And when you apply that to habits, it's really powerful.
So instead of just grabbing my phone when I'm bored,
Mm.
I might actually pause
Mm.
and notice that feeling of boredom, the urge to grab the phone, maybe even the tension I'm holding in my shoulders. And then in that moment, I can actually make a choice.
Exactly. That pause, that moment of awareness That's where the magic happens. You create space between the trigger and your usual response, so you can choose something different.
It's like hitting the pause button on autopilot. And the more we practice mindfulness, the better we get at recognizing those moments
Hmm.
and making a different choice. I've tried meditating before, but I never really connected it to my habits. Does Inner Balance Red Print suggest any specific mindfulness techniques?
It does. It covers a bunch of different practices, like breathing exercises, body scan meditations, even mindful walking. It encourages people to experiment and find what works for them. The key is making mindfulness a regular thing, even just for a few minutes every day.
You know, it's funny. I always thought of mindfulness as something for relaxation or stress relief. I never really thought about how it could help change habits. This is such a cool connection. What's interesting is that Inner Balance Red Print seems to have a really holistic view. It's not just about willpower or quick fixes. It's about understanding your needs, being self-aware, and creating an environment that supports you.
Absolutely. It recognizes that lasting change happens on different levels, individual, social, even societal, and it gives people the tools to take control of their environment and their choices.
This has been so eye-opening. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of habits and a bunch of new strategies to try.
Me too. It's inspiring to see how much power we have to break free from those old patterns
Hmm.
and create a life that's truer to ourselves.
And, it's not about being perfect.
Right.
It's about progress,
Exactly.
not perfection.
Progress, not perfection.
So true. Even small changes can add up over time. Like they say, Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither are good habits. Well, this has been an amazing deep dive into habits. You've given us so much to think about, and I know our listeners are feeling ready to tackle those habits that have been holding them back.
Absolutely.
It's been such a pleasure chatting with you.
Likewise. And remember, everyone, you have the power to create the life you want, one mindful choice at a time.
Beautifully said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this episode of The Deep Dive. Don't forget to check out Inner Balance Red Print for even more tips and strategies. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.